it's Jillian. Today we're going to take a look at solving quadratic equations by factoring. So solving anything always means that, of course, you're looking for a solution. They both have the letters SOLV, SOLV, SOL anyhow, solution and solving. So here what we're going to do is, of course, there's going to be some factoring involved in our solving. And we know that there's going to be an x squared in our equation. And we're going to be looking for what x is, or what y is, or whatever the variable is. So let's take a look. To solve a quadratic equation by factoring, first we write the equation in the form. This is standard form, where you have the x squared, then the x, then the constant equals 0. And of course, in this case, when it's y squared y constant equals 0. That's called standard form. Then we're going to factor the trinomial. And then we're going to use the zero product property. I'll talk about that in a second. We're going to solve the two resulting equations to find the roots, and then we're going to check our solutions. So let me just talk through this again. We're going to put it in descending form, x squared x constant equals 0. We're going to factor. Then we're going to use the zero product property. So what the heck is that? Well, the zero product property is a property that states when you have something times something else and it equals 0, that means that either the first or the second something must be 0 because, of course, you know your 0 times tables. So when we solve, I'm going to circle back to this and you'll see what I mean. So let's start with this. We're going to solve by factoring. So first thing I'm going to do is factor this trinomial. So I know I'm going to put my two brackets equals 0. And then I know I've got a y and a y at the beginning because when I FOIL this out, I can FOIL this out and check if I end up with this initial question when I find the solution. I know that y times y is y squared. Then I have to figure out what two numbers multiply to 24 and add to 10. So if they don't come to mind right away, you need to start listing the factors. So 1 and 24 definitely don't add to 10. 2 and 12, well, those subtract to 10, but this says they have to add to 10. So let's see what else we have. Is 3 times something 24? Absolutely. Do those add to 10? Nope. Let's keep going. And finally, we get to the pair of numbers that multiply to 24 and add to 10. So we're going to put these numbers in the brackets. We know the signs are the same and both of them are positive from what we did in chapter 3 with polynomials. And now we're at this part C. We have our equation in descending form. We didn't have to rearrange it. We factored it. And now we're going to use the zero product property. So if this times this equals 0, then that means the stuff in this brackets better equal 0. So 0 times anything is 0. Or the stuff in this set of brackets is going to equal 0. Well, what makes this equal 0? You might be able to just take a look at it and say, well, I know negative 4 plus 4 is 0, so y is negative 4 here. Or if you can't see it right away, just write what's in the brackets equals 0 and then bring the 4 over and solve for what you're looking for. Same thing here. If you can't see right away that negative 6 plus 6 equals 0, then let what's in the brackets equal 0. Am I on here? Am I okay? Oh yeah, sorry, something popped up on my screen. I thought we turned off. Anyhow, so we let what's in the brackets equal 0, and then we solve for y. Bring 6 over, it becomes negative 6. So when y is negative 4, or when y is negative 6, this equals 0. Now, why is this or and not and? Well, as you know from just speaking English, or means that something or the other thing can happen, but they don't have to both happen. And means that they both have to happen. Here, if y equals negative 4, y doesn't also have to equal negative 6. These don't both have to be 0. It's just one of them has to be 0. So or is the way is the answer. So now we're going to solve by factoring. So we solved. The solution is y is equal to negative 4 or y is equal to negative 6. And when we check our solutions, basically what we're doing is we're literally writing this out, the actual question, and seeing if when we sub in -4, does it indeed equal 0? Well, let's see. We're going to do that right now. Okay, so we've got here 10 times -4 plus 24. So -4 squared is 16. That's -40. That's positive 24. And of course, this plus this is 40, and 40 minus 40 is indeed 0. We're supposed to line up for good form our equal signs, but I'm running out of space. And then we would do the same thing for -6, which I'm not going to write out right now. That's how you would check. So now let's take a look at something like this. Here we don't have a trinomial. Now you could put all of this, you could square out these brackets, right? I'm going to do it right here. 3x minus 1 all squared equals 25. You could square out your brackets. If you don't know the shortcut, you can just go like this. And then 9x squared. -3x is -6x. That times that is positive 1. Bring the 25 over is -25 equals 0. And then we've got 9x squared minus 6x. That's -24 equals 0. And then factor and then do what we did here. However, when your question is in the format of something squared equals a number, there's a easier way to do it. And even though this is in the section of solve by factoring, I'm going to show you that when you have something like this, where you have something squared equals something else, how we're going to solve it. So here's how we're going to solve it. We're going to say that if something squared equals 25, well, what are the two things that squared do equal 25? One of the answers is 5. 5 squared is 25. The other answer is -5. -5 squared is 25. So that means that this stuff in the brackets is either equal to 5 or it is equal to -5, and then we solve. So here I'm going to solve this one first. So we've got 3x equals 5 plus 1, 3x equals 6, and of course divide both sides by 3, and we get x equals 2. Or we're going to do 3x minus 1 equals -5, so I'm going to bring over the -1 so that it's positive 1, and we have 3x equals -4, and then when I divide both sides by 3, I get that x equals -4 over 3. So the answers to this question are that, and clearly this route is way less work than this is to get to the same solution. Okay, let's keep going. Here I believe I have a perfect square trinomial. Let's see, back from chapter 3, we learned about this. So the square root of this is 3x. The square root of this is 5. If this times this doubled is this, which it is, this times this is 15x, doubled is 30x, then I have a perfect square trinomial, which means that when I factor, I just write down these numbers. Whatever this sign is goes in here, and I'm factored. There we go. If you don't see that, then you have to do, what multiplies and do the whole method when you have to factor a trinomial. But if you remember the two special trinomials, which are perfect square trinomials or difference of squares, it's obviously going to help you. So when something squared equals 0, then this must be 0, because the only thing squared that equals 0 is 0. So that means this is 0, because as I said, 0 squared equals 0. So this, that's being squared, must also equal 0. So let's take a look. We've got 3x plus 5 equals 0, 3x equals -5. Divide both sides by 3, and you're going to have that x equals -5 over 3. And there's your answer. Here, let's do this one. When you have a binomial, but it's still quadratic. So binomial means two terms, and quadratic means that there's a squared, in this case p squared. You do not need to trinomial factor, you can just common factor. So let's take a look at that. So what is common with 6 and 16? Well, 2. And p squared and p, we can take out a p. So when I common factor out a 2p, I'm left with 3p minus 8. And of course, the way to check that you did it right is this times this, that. Yep. Is this times this, that? Yep. Okay, so now we're good. So again, we know when something times something else is 0, either the first thing is equal to 0 or the second thing is equal to 0. So when I make a mistake, you can just keep going. You know that's 3p minus 8 equals 0. And then we divide both sides by 2, so p equals 0. I like to sort of rectangle it off so it stands out. And or 3p equals 8, p equals 8 over 3. So those are your answers. Okay. Here, let's take a look at this. This we have, I'm going to do F first, and then I'm going to take a look. Actually, I'll do E first. I don't know why I just said that. So here, what we have is, to get rid of fractions, we multiply by the, what do we always do? We multiply by what when we want to get rid of fractions? That's right, the lowest common denominator. So here, we of course know that that's a fraction like that. And to get rid of the fractions, we're going to multiply by the lowest common denominator. So let's do it. Here we've got 5a squared over 4 minus 5 over 1 equals 15a over 4. So the lowest common denominator is 4. So we're going to multiply this by 4, which means the 4 will be gone, and we'll just have 5a squared. Multiply that by 4. 5 times 4 is 20. And this times 4 cancels this 4 out, and then we have 15a. Now we're going to do exactly what the instructions said, which was write the equation in descending form. So we're going to bring this over. 5a squared minus 15a minus 20 equals 0. We know that we can divide, but we can simplify. So let's simplify as best we can. And we notice that all of these numbers are multiple of 5. So we can divide everything by 5. So let's do that. And reduce. So that is a squared. That's 3a. That's 4. And of course, 0 over anything is 0. So now we have a pretty simple trinomial to factor. What multiplies to 4 and subtracts to 3? Well, 4 times 1, and they subtract to 3. So let's write that up. A4, A1, and let's figure out our signs. So so any of the signs are different, and the bigger number is going to be negative, so the signs are different, and 4 is bigger than 1, so 4 is negative. Now we're going to, just like we did up here, we're going to set each bracket equal to 0 and solve, or if you can just eyeball it, you can say, okay, 4 minus 4 is 0, so a is equal to 4, or a is equal to, and negative 1 plus 1 is 0, so negative 1, and that's your answer. Now let's take a look at the next one. So here we have decimals and fractions. No way. No way, no how, not okay. So we need to get this decimal into a fraction. So 3.5 is 3.5. And then we need to turn it into, from a mixed fraction into an improper fraction. So we know 3 times 2 plus 1 is 7. Denominator stays the same. And then we're going to do what we did here, which is multiply by the lowest common denominator, which of course is 2, 1, 2, so it's 2. So when we multiply this by 2, we get this. When we multiply this by 2, we get this. And when we multiply this by 2, we get that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect my numbers. And I have x squared equals 9. Well, just like up here, if something squared equaled 25, we knew positive 5 or negative 5 squared equaled 25. So if something squared is equal to 3, we know that x is equal to 3 or negative 3. And there we go. Let's take a look now at some word problems.